Good evening, everybody. Tonight it's my pleasure to welcome Marilyn Minter to speak with us. Marilyn is an artist, an activist, and a devoted teacher known for her candor in critiques, which we were just discussing. In her activism and her art, though, she asks us to pay attention to women, to women's bodies, and to women's rights, particularly their reproductive rights. Her paintings and her photographs and her videos are as rigorous as they are seductive. They draw us in to a glamorous world in which truth is sexy and goo is glamorous.
You said sublime there.
I'm sorry. And goo is sublime. Thank you. My original text is better than my riff. So Marilyn has had a long and fruitful career with recent gallery exhibitions, solo exhibitions, at Lehman Maupin, Hong Kong, Regen Projects in Los Angeles, and Salon 94 Bowery in New York. Lots of others as well. Her museum retrospective, which is called Pretty Dirty, premiered in 2015 at the Contemporary Arts Museum in Houston, and then traveled to the Museum of Contemporary Art in Denver, the Contemporary Art Museum in St. Louis, the Orange County Museum of Art, and then finally the Brooklyn Museum, where I saw it and was blown away to see the span of her career all under one roof, and to see how her work has evolved stylistically, but the subject matter and the sort of the fundamental interest in women, women's bodies, and women's rights is this really strong through line. The work has gotten a lot more refined, right? Mm-hmm. Her first solo exhibition, at least the first one listed on her curriculum vitae, was at the Everson Museum in Syracuse, New York in 1975. She was included, or her work was included, in the 2006 Whitney Biennial, and she's received a bunch of honors and grants and awards, including the Louis Comfort Tiffany Grant in 2006, a Guggenheim Fellowship in 1998, two NIFA Fellowships, one in 1992 and another in 1988, and something that no longer exists, a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship in 1989. So that was before the NEA got out of direct funding for artists. Not entirely your responsibility for getting them in trouble, but that was around that time, right?
Yeah, at the same time.
Yeah.
I tried.
Yeah, Marilyn's work is in numerous museum collections, far too many to mention here, but the highlights that jumped out at me were the Perez Museum in Miami, the Guggenheim here in New York, SF MoMA at San Francisco, Denver Art Museum, Kunsthaus Museum in Zurich, the Moderna Museet in Stockholm, the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, and the Whitney Museum. I think I forgot to mention MoMA, the one up on 53rd Street. Yeah, that old place. She's been on the faculty here at SVA, I'm very pleased to say, since 2005. So Marilyn's going to give a talk, and then we're going to have a conversation, and then we'll open it up to you for questions. Please join me in welcoming Marilyn Minter.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? This is working? Okay. Well, the first PowerPoint image, I call it JPEG slide, I found this book, and it was a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, and this is the first drawing that I found that I made when I was a little girl. And I thought it was really interesting that I drew a high heel shoe. I was drawing with some friends, and we were like 5 years old, and we were drawing brownies. You know, brownies are baby Girl Scouts, and my brownies were better than my friends. And it was the first time I ever found anything I could do better than other people. So then I asked everybody I know to teach me everything they knew how to draw. And I learned how to draw from comic books, because nobody could draw that I knew really, other than, you know, making, you know, a hand walking, all 5 fingers going that way, and, you know, nothing about perspective. So I taught myself from Brenda Starr. Do you know who that is? It's an old comic book from the 50s and the 60s, and she was a girl reporter that had a sparkle in her eye. So, and also this comic book called Prince Valiant. You've never heard of it, but some of you probably learned how to draw from manga. Anybody in here? No? No one learned how to draw from manja? Well, our cartoons. Yeah, I mean, that's how I learned. And so this is, I just kept drawing and all the time. I was always sitting there drawing, and I really loved drawing, and I got into it, and I lost track of time. But the first body of work that I ever showed, that, or that I ever made that was at all interesting to people, was in 1969 when I was an undergraduate at University of Florida. And these are photos of my mother, who was a drug addict. And at that time in 1969, this was way before Oprah or where people talked about anything. And you never saw pictures of high-end addiction. They were always just Jim Goldbergs with needles in somebody lying on the street with a needle in their arm. And so this was like a shock to the other students when I brought this to class. I didn't think anything of it, really, because my brothers and I look at these pictures and we don't see what you're seeing, because all we see is our mother. And she was a drug addict. She was high all the time. I drove her car to school every day. I thought she was crazy, and I thought she was always passed out, or, I have stories that are sort of make sense of the work I make now, but I didn't know this at the time. She pulled her hair out. It was a nervous condition, and so she wore wigs. So there's pictures of her putting makeup on, because at one time she was a very, very beautiful woman. And in this one, she's dyeing her hair. She was posing, she was dyeing her eyebrows, that's what it was. So she wasn't thinking anything of it. But when I took them to school and I showed my proof sheets, everybody went, "Oh my God, that's your mother." And I grew up in South Florida, and nowadays there's always a story about Florida man or Florida woman. Well, in the 60s, this is where people went to escape. So my mother wasn't that unusual from my friends' mothers, but I was in a very conservative school in upstate Florida in Gainesville, and it was sort of disconcerting to the other students. So I felt waves of shame come over me, and I didn't show them again until 1995. So I just wanted to show you the first body of work that made any sense to keep. Now this painting here, I just want to show you what a terrible painter I was. I went to a school at University of Florida, like I said, it was very conservative. And if you weren't an abstract expressionist, you were considered not a true artist, not a real artist. You didn't count. And literally my freshman class for painting was you went in there with one of those cardboard blank canvases and you were just supposed to make a painting. We didn't work from still lifes, we didn't work from the model. And so I didn't do very well in painting, so I got a C in painting, I got an A in photography, so I decided to major in painting. But my junior year, Warhol was really a big deal in New York City, and I thought, oh, I can work from images. So I started putting together, I taught myself just painting from other images. Now, I wanted to show you this because this is one of those slides that, well, everyone who comes, I know you see this, a talk like this every week, and I want you to know that I've been honing this talk for 40 years. And everything I show you, there could have been 500 slides that you're not seeing because they were so bad. So everybody you see up here is showing you the absolute best they can do, that they've ever done. So it's really important for you to know that you have to be able to fail. So I taught myself how to paint. Look how bad I was. This is oil paint, and I didn't know what I was doing, and no one taught me. So I'll just skip to the terrible paintings I made to the paintings I made when I came to New York City. And I was working from my own photographs. I was shooting. And I thought, and this is 1976, and I thought to myself, oh, photorealism was really big, so I'm gonna paint black and white photographs. I think that I'm a genius. So at first I was taking these photos of things on the floor, and I thought they were wonderful, and I made all these paintings. And then these are two of them about the same size. This next one is from the photos that I worked from. So I actually painted black and white photos. Now, in the 70s, I know there was Eilston showing at MoMA, and that was the beginning of color photography being considered an art form. But everything was 8x10 black and whites, or I don't know, 11 by 14, or, you know, just small photos. All the Diane Arbus photos, they were really not big at all. So I thought I was a genius, and I was going around to different galleries with my slides, and they said, yes, you're a photorealist, but a really boring one. So nobody was at all interested in the work, and it was really disconcerting and very heartbreaking. And because I thought this was sort of a conceptual kind of photorealism that you actually would see. You know, I actually made paintings of black and white photos, and I left the canvas around it raw, so it was like clearly a black and white photo in a space. And so anyway, no one paid any attention. I kept all the paintings in storage. I actually had them by the time I had my retrospective, which was 2015. So I actually got to show them again for the first time. Now, this is where I learned a real lesson. It was in the almost the 80s in New York City, and there was this huge influx of and movements. There were these movements. There was conceptual art, there was pop art, and there was abstract expressionism, there was minimalism. But the movements lasted for years. And so there was a point where Expressionism was everywhere, and it was almost like being an abstract expressionist in the 50s again. And the painters were Julian Schnabel and David Salle and all these German expressionists. So I obviously am a very labor-intensive, and I get lost in you know, I know this is, I don't have a politically correct word for OCD, because I know I'm not clinically OCD, but I could work for 18 hours on a drawing. I got total pleasure out of it. And making these paintings, I had no trouble. So what I ended up doing, and this was in the Lower East Side in the East Village, and I made these really, really bad expressionist paintings. And when I did my retrospective, there's a big blank where you never see any work. And what I ended up doing is working with a German expressionist painter who was kind of famous at the time. And I was, you know, I did we painted over each other, and I learned a lot from him. He projected the whole time he was painting, and I just projected to draw something out. So we made this group of paintings together. We showed on the Lower East Side. We were always in trouble. We fought constantly because we were painting on top of one another. And these are like 15-foot paintings and 13-foot paintings. And we were, you know, heading in a pretty dismal direction. So there was a point where I had to clean up my act. And all the work I made, he didn't. And he kept going. And he was a pretty well-known artist. And now you've probably never heard of him. But I did straighten myself out a bit. I broke up the collaboration. And this is 1986. And the first work I made were, I just decided to get rid of my skill level altogether, because I thought, it doesn't get me anywhere. I'm a photorealist. Everyone hates photorealism. They still hate it. And, you know, it's just technical masturbation. I can't figure out a way to make it work for me in the art world. So I would find images from popular culture and turn them into a dot screen. And I started with this image because I thought this was really interesting about competition between Sophia Loren and Jane Mansfield, who were these big 50s, 60s movie stars. And then at the same time, on the other side of the room, I called these the big girls. At the same time, I made these little girl paintings on the other side of the room. There was a lot of them, but I'm just going to show you two. So these sort of went together, the big girls and the little girls. And it's, you know, looking into this funhouse mirror. And these were from the Encyclopedia Britannica that I found. And I just turned everything into a dot screen. So I projected it. I took the projector and I put it at an angle. This is all stuff I learned from a German collaborator, because I saw him doing this all the time. But I also gave up oil paint, because I wanted to make something that didn't, because we did have some modicum of success, but people didn't buy the paintings that we made together because we fought so much, because we're, you know, self-involved, soul-suckingly self-involved artists who only think about themselves, narcissistic, and impossible to be around. And here we were painting on each other. So we were too combustible for people to take a chance on buying. So anyway, that broke up. And this is the first body of work that I didn't hate. And then this enamel paint, I really got into it. And I started letting it drip. And this is a body of work I did that I called 100 Food Porn. And I made all these images from cookbooks. I took them out of magazines, and I would paint the underpainting, then I'd hire assistants to paint the dot screen. And they painted with the projector on. Now the point of me making these, honestly, was I thought, you know, why don't artists, I would hear, like I would be painting to NPR or some kind of radio talk shows. I would hear ads for MoMA for art shows. And I thought, I want to advertise on late night TV where people I knew it was like the days of Twin Peaks. And everybody I knew was obsessed with Twin Peaks, and everybody I knew was watching David Letterman. So I found out how much it costs to do a 30-second ad on David Letterman. How much do you think it costs to do a 30-second ad on David Letterman? How much?
$50,000.
Why 15?
50.
50. I'm a starving artist. Okay? It's $1,800 for 30 seconds. And you know, you're not buying the whole country. You're buying the tri-state area. So I instead of the show I had was at Simon Watson Gallery and also Max Protest, both of which are gone now. But I didn't have any money, so I took the money they give artists to advertise in art magazines, like in those days it was Art Forum, Art in America. I took that money to do the ads, which are pretty expensive, and I bought 30 seconds on David Letterman, Arsenio Hall, and Nightline. And I just sent out a card saying, watch the show at a certain time, and this is what it looked like.
In which our effort in the Middle East collapses.
Let me ask you just to take a break for a second. We've got to take a quick break, and I'll come back and let you continue that thought when we continue our conversation with Henry Kissinger and James Webb in a moment.
What is this, like incense? You put incense or something in there?
It's a microphone, actually.
Oh, that's decent. But see, you knew that.
Yeah,
and I didn't. That's the point.
You were in Philly saying, well, we gotta take commercial. Take commercial,
Already?
We'll come right back, and our mothers will be out here, and they'll fight for a while. We'll be right back.
Two of your favorites, M&M's and peanut butter, are together at last. Introducing M&M's peanut butter chocolate candies. Pure milk chocolate, real peanut butter, your favorite chocolate candy, now with creamy peanut butter. New M&M's peanut butter chocolate candies. The best thing to happen to peanut butter since jelly.
You don't have to watch the whole thing again, but I just wanted to show you how it looks in the way people saw it. And no one knew what it was. So, but I knew, and I knew that I was the first artist that had made a TV commercial to advertise the show, and that was what I really, my goal was, to be that person. So I got a lot of press about it because I knew, because I was the very first person, so that was the good news. So then this is around 1990 now, and I went to a show at Metro Pictures of Mike Kelly. Everyone knows Mike's work, right? So, and it was just brilliant. It blew my mind. It was stuffed animal sculptures and stuffed animal paintings, you know, and felt banners. And one of the pieces he had was a decoupaged chest of drawers decoupaged eyes and mouth. It was like exploring a mall culture or some 13-year-old girl's bedroom. They even had a how-to sex manual taped to the bottom of the chest of drawers, and then a mirror so you could see it. So like what a little girl might do, you know. And I thought, God, this is genius. You know, he just took the context of what we consider, you know, so contemptible, this run like a little girl, you know, and this intellectual changed the context by him making the work. So then it occurred to me, well, what subject matter have women artists never touched? Because I thought to myself, when I saw his work, that if a woman artist did this, she wouldn't be given the time of day. But here's this intellectual from LA, you know, mining something we all know is real, we all know is true. So then I thought, well, the one thing that women never touched was hardcore porn. I mean, I knew they touched porn, but I figured, you know, I had to go for the money shot, you know, the cum shots. So, and this was 1989 when I first made this group of work. And I was thinking as a pro-sex feminist, I'd already gone through, you know, the second wave, and I thought, you know, oh, it's time for women to make, and there was happening, you know, women to make images for their own amusement and their own pleasure. And I knew, you know, Candida Royale's work, and she was making, I don't know if anyone saw The Deuce. Anyone watch that at all? Well, that's the filmmaker's based on her and The Deuce. And I thought, you know, that nobody, I still think it, nobody has politically correct fantasies. And so I thought, you know, what does it mean when a woman artist takes images from an abusive history and repurposes them? Does it change the meaning? And I wasn't trying to be sexy as much as I was trying to be provocative and funny. Like I called this one the Supremes. Because there's a lot of pictures of women surrounding like a microphone, except it's a dick, you know. And I got tons of those, you know. And so I made this entire body of work, sort of, I know it sounds crazy now, but it was the middle of political correctness, and it was the first time I'd ever seen political correctness, because I just assumed everybody thought like I did. But what I didn't count on is that people were so fearful of women owning, and they still are, but this was a real glass ceiling. Women did not, especially youngish ones, did not own any sexual imagery. It was way too threatening to everyone, male and female. And I got excoriating reviews. My gallery closed the show down a week early. I mean, these are images because you all have the internet. You know them by the time you're 8 years old, but this was like shocking to the art world for some reason. And because I guess they never looked at porn, unless they did, they didn't let anyone know it or they hid it. It wasn't anything that anyone celebrated looking at. And so I felt like I pretty much was getting beat up by everybody. So I said, okay, I was feeling beat up by the art world, so I started beating up my paintings. I just took it out. I took a belt sander to the paintings, and it was on metal, enamel on metal. I put acid on the metal. It started, and I really basically had to start my whole entire career over again. I was feeling really like a total loser, and that I just, you know, I thought that they were important. I never didn't think they were important, but I thought I wasn't communicating because people were running out of the room. And so that's not communication. And I was just causing trouble, and it was coming from fear. And the fear was from the feminists where, you know, that I was a traitor to feminism because I even dared to make images that were sexual in nature. And that was from the political correct moment that was pretty strong at that time. And so my side won, obviously. And now these paintings, everybody wants them. So my way out of this all was, the interesting thing was in 1995, I had some support how I went through all of that. From other artists especially, but from an art dealer who gave me a show of my mother's photos. And because I showed my mother's photos, the art world started taking me seriously again, because if you come from dysfunction, this is the myth that then you must be serious. So, and it's sort of true, you know, people do come from dysfunction if you're an artist, especially if you're any good, usually. And it wasn't, I know that's a cliche, but it's kind of true. So what are cliches, you know? Every cloud does have a silver lining, and kittens are cute. So, you know, I just accepted it. But I transitioned, I stopped doing the dot screen, and I just started painting again, and I started working the way I am now, and now we're coming up to the present. And these are the first paintings I didn't throw out. And that's an armpit. And my whole idea with all of these images, these are small paintings, was to take pictures of things that, and this is like, I guess I was thinking about this until this moment, always think about this, that it's something like everybody knows, just the way Mike Kelly took the mindset of a 13-year-old adolescent, budding, you know, teenager. We all know that look, and he made a picture of it. So I was always thinking, and still to this day, that I want to make images that we all know, we just have never seen before. Like you might not have ever seen a painting of someone pulling their socks down and there's lines on the legs. Or a treasure trail. You don't know if this is a guy or a girl. So, and it was like, I started using, and I started shooting again. So I'm now shooting, I'm now making, those paintings I just showed you were made from images strictly something I shot. Now I'm starting to play in Photoshop quite a bit. So, and I didn't have any, I really couldn't, the paintings I was all alone, and it took me so long to do that I started showing photographs, my photos, the photos that I didn't do anything to, and I just left them and I just installed them. So that's the only way I could fill up a gallery, was to have paintings on one side and photos on the other. And these are some of those photos. This is one of the paintings. And this one has Photoshop in it. This is when I started working with Photoshop. And once I found Photoshop, I went town. I really loved it. It was like, took my drawing to a totally another level. These are photos that I was sort of playing off the idea of cultural images that were popular for advertising. And in those days, they would have women, they still do probably, kissing jewelry or licking it, or even an egg, you know. And what I ended up doing was my models would take the jewelry or an egg, bite into it to break it, or shove the jewelry into their mouth till they started to gag. And that's when I started shooting it. These are photos, all photos. And then another thing I thought about is, like, you can have the most expensive shoes, but if you're in a muddy, or you're dancing all night, your feet are going to get dirty. So I saw the dirt in advertising was just like put on with tweezers. It looks so phony. So I thought, you know, I just take what's already there, tropes of advertising, and push it. And so I did this whole series, and at the same time, I worked with Creative Time. This was in 2006, and I worked with Creative Time, and I put these billboards of these really expensive shoes with dirty feet all over Manhattan. This is a painting, this big heel. And then these are some of the billboards. And they were in Chelsea. And so it was between the billboards and the paintings I had in the Whitney, I sort of relaunched my art career. And at this time, by the time this was 2006, everybody loved the sexual imagery. Although I still make a real case, and I can still do it, that if you're young, if you're an old lady like me, you can do anything. You know, everybody, you know, that famous picture of Louise Bourgeois holding that giant dildo, that Mapplethorpe, and she's adorable, right? But I can do anything. Betty Tompkins can do anything. But God forbid, you know, if you're like a youngish young woman working with sexual imagery. And I always think of Miley Cyrus with that big finger at the MTV Awards. And then everybody just slut-shamed her all over. And there's still, this is a real glass ceiling, and I see it all the time, where both men and women go crazy when young women work with sexual imagery. So I tell that to my students, you're gonna get slammed. It's like an automatic So it makes me think all the time of rethinking or doing opposite behaviors than what my first reaction is going to be. Like, why is Taylor Swift not cool anymore? Why is Lena Dunham not cool anymore? Why is Kylie Jenner frowned on and laughed at? I mean, she's a billionaire. She's a billionaire at the age of 21. Who else do you know that's a billionaire at the age of 21? It just made me think of how we build people up and we slam them down, especially females. So that's getting on a rant, so I won't keep going in that direction right now, but we'll come back to it. So anyway, I started doing these combinations of paintings in Photoshop. So I would make these things called references. So that would be a painting, and it's got about 10 layers of Photoshop in there. And then this is one of the photos, which I didn't do anything to. It's like when I leave them alone, then they become photos. I don't have to do anything to them, I just crop them. And here's another one. And did you know this artist, Boyce, when we were in school? Alicia Thatcher? Yeah, she was one of my students. Anyway, she was one of my students. She was freckled and really pale skin with lots of freckles, and I just love the way she looks, so I worked with her all the time. I did this whole series of freckles because they also were being photoshopped out of the entire culture. I mean, Julianne Moore looked like she had no freckles when she's covered in them. And so I decided I was going to make images of freckles paintings. And the one, this is a photo, but this is a painting. This is a big painting. And then I went to freckles and bubbles. So this next one, that's one fingerprint and a painting. And that's the whole painting. I just wanted to show you how, and this is like, I don't know, maybe 15 layers of Photoshop. And so the paintings take now like a year to make. And that's the actual painting. And here are the bubbles and the freckles, and it's gonna go quick now. So then one day I was getting off the subway and I saw a woman with a shopping bag. It was just, this is how I somehow things strike me, as I'm really intuitive. I make the image and then I figure out what I'm going to say about them afterwards. But it was like a woman who had her tongue sticking out. It was a shopping bag, and the tongue had yellow on the end of it. And I thought to myself, oh my God, what would it look like painting with your tongue? I swear to God, this is a true story. Someone had a show at the Deichtorhallen in Germany, and the catalog actually says that I paint with my tongue. I thought it was funny. Okay, so I was thinking about what it looked like if you painted with your tongue. So I started shooting underneath glass. And so these are some of the photos that I took from this series. And I actually, during this series, I actually had a gig, this image, I had a gig shooting this model's eye for MAC. And I piggybacked this whole shoot with MAC. I talked to the videographer. They wanted videography for their ad campaign because they had a bunch of artists doing MAC ads. This was in 2009, I guess. And so this is one of the photos I took from it. And, but every time the model changed the eye makeup, I had her come over and lick glass. So this is how I got all of these images. And because of all these images, I made all these paintings. And these paintings are really big. They're like, and this is like 85, 80 layers of Photoshop. So a drip from one thing, even the bottom of the tongue from one thing, the nostrils from another. Here's what they look like in a gallery. So then I made this video. I just took a really, actually it was the videographer who made it. Just like sort of I did the commercial, I made this to show between movies at like art theaters, like at the Angelica, or at this time it was the Sunshine, it was Landmark Theater, to advertise my show at I don't know if this is Regen or Salon. I don't know which one we pulled. But this is a promo. Yeah, this was at Regen, because I did it on Sunset Boulevard at Regen Projects. So I did it in 2 different places, and MoMA bought it and put it in their lobby for a year and a half. Now, Mac was furious that I did this, but then when MoMA bought it and put it in their lobby, they were fine. So, but I got into the paintings. I started shooting a friend of mine who wanted me to document her pregnancy. She was 8 months pregnant. Her name is Wangeci Mutu. You might know her work. And so she actually styled herself. But this liquid that I use all the time, it's candy and vodka mixed together. So she's 8 months pregnant. So she would like take it in her mouth and shoot it up like a fountain. And I just kept shooting it. And I ended up with these paintings. And we did a collaboration, sort of. Then I started like thinking in terms of images on bus stops, on, like shoes on a wet night. These are giant paintings. And sort of the paint sort of became metaphorical for me, like the desiring machine. And I like kicking in it, playing in it. This is a photo. And then I ended up doing, this is a video I did that was in my retrospective. This is just the promo for it, too. And I've sort of been working behind glass now since 2009. So I shoot a lot of video these days. I was using I know you see the Phantom camera everywhere, but when I shot this, it wasn't in every single ad that you see. So I really love the Phantom. I use it a lot in the videos I've been making the last few years. So anyway, I'm shooting behind glass, a lot of, and it's sort of getting more and more abstract, basically. Because the closer you get to things, the more, the narrative, I'm sort of allergic to narrative. So I wanted to just show you how I do it. So with this piece, the photo on top is a photo I shot back in 2000. And then I took a piece of glass that was already cracked, and it had graffiti on it, and I put that in front of the photo, and then I poured rain all over it, water, and then I sort of thought about it as if a car headlight was hitting, so I could get a flare. So that's the photo that it started from, and the photo's maybe 11 by 8 by 10 or something like that, and then that painting is 15 feet. So this is the painting itself, another version of it. These were all on my show in LA. And I was working like that same idea of graffiti and rain and stormy night. And this is a smaller one. And now this one is it's a really large painting, it's 15 feet. But I wanted to show you some of the ways I change it. So here's where it started. This is the photo I took of one of my students with the jewels in her mouth. She was in a lot of those jewel photos that I did and paintings. And then I put a piece of glass in front of it. And that's the first shot. That's the shot, that's the bones. The bones of the painting. And okay, then the next thing I did was I took the circle and I made it in focus. And I took the V and I changed the V into this. It wasn't a V, I mean, it was just graffiti, but. And so I repainted now. I have to tell you, at this point, I changed it in Photoshop. I hadn't done anything yet, but I had painted this entire thing. And then I hated the left side, so it was already painted like this. So I just erased it, and I did this on top. So that's the bones, and then that's the finished painting. And that's just the process itself. These are photos because I was working now with breath of life, you know, just working with frost and steam, and I have been for a while now. And these are all big paintings. They were in my last show. I guess it was 3 years ago now. And just touching your tongue to a piece of frosted glass. This is all pretty big paintings. These are all big. And then I was thinking about pubic hair and how it's disappeared in the culture. So I got asked to, it was an assignment that got scratched because I thought I'm gonna take pictures of pubic hair that are really good looking so that people don't see it as the most horrible thing in the world anymore. And I made all these pictures and the models, it took 8 months, some of them, to grow out the pubic hair. And because I wanted every color and I wanted every ethnicity. So, and this is one that I shot. This is one of my redheads. And then I shot it behind glass too. So I was just playing, it was like sort of eating my own work. And then I said, okay, I'm gonna make paintings so beautiful that you can put them in your living room. And this is one of them, and it's over somebody's fireplace, but you know, nobody knows what it is. And the whole idea was I'll make pubic hair so good looking that you have to be able to put it in your house. And these are pretty big paintings. I should tell you, nobody buys them. They like them, and they even think about buying them, and then they find out what they are, and then they don't. But I don't care, because I'm going to have them and show them all in 10 years, and everyone's going to love them then. So these are pretty big paintings. That's a very, very abstract one. So I went from the pubic hair to the bathers, and I was thinking about how women never paint other women grooming. And how many bathers have you seen all through art history? I mean, grooming women is a trope of art history. But what women have been, you know, the painters, you know, they're usually just the subject. So I started making these bather paintings, and it's interesting because I'm having a show, a museum show in France, of all places, of all these bather paintings, and I'm working on them right now. And they're all 21st century bathers. And they're pretty big. Here's my last show at Regen Projects. So it has mouths and bathers. And, oh, and the painting on the right is called Cornucopia, and that's one of the bush paintings. And a couple of people were about to buy it until they found out what it was. So isn't that interesting? I think it is anyway. So the last thing I've been doing is I did this video once Trump got elected. I did a video called My Country 'Tis of Thee, and I shot a whole bunch of people writing in the steam. And this is Our Country Needs You. These are some of the stills. And that's actually a gallery dealer at Fortnite, Fabiola Alondra. And then this should be the video. This is just a promo. I found this model on Instagram, but now I see her everywhere. Okay, then, actually now what I'm doing is still more bathers. So I just finished that this year, and I'm going to show you some of the ones in progress. This is all going to be in my show at Montpellier. Nicolas Bouriard is the director of this museum. These are, I sort of was trying to touch on these kind of pre-Raphaelites with these long red hair, but I definitely thought I'd have to modernize it. How do I get it to 21st century? And I use a lot of distortion. And these are the last ones. This one, the painting on the left, I had it already painted and I just hated it. So the painting on the right, I'm still working on. I just finished the face and I'm changing it pretty radically. Now we have to do I did the top, but I haven't even thought about how I'm going to do the bottom. And these are some more, and they're all fairly big. And that's it.
Thank you, Marilyn, so much.
My pleasure.
So you went through some pretty hard times.
No one escapes, right?
Probably not.
Yeah, I've never met anyone.
Like, you know, there was
Look
this...
at your notes. Uh-oh.
I took a lot of notes. You said a lot of really great stuff. You know, you had this one point in 1986 when you decided to abandon photorealism because I just couldn't make it work in the art world.
Well, I figured out a system. And I thought about it a lot and how I worked with these layers and layers and layers of enamel paint. And then I thought, okay, this is the way I can do it because I get this quality with enamel that I can never get with oil. There's real layers. I mean, it sounds crazy, but myself and my assistants, we think of ourselves as sculptors almost. Because if you get close to the painting, you can see there's all these layers that are different colors underneath, and I can't do that with oil paint.
What kept you going when the going was really lonely? When you had
Other
that
artists.
show of the porn paintings that got panned and the show was closed early?
Yeah.
How did that work?
Well, they said these paintings are great. You know, and I thought to myself, I mean, I read a lot of biographies, and maybe it's when I started reading biographies, and I saw how tough every artist really has it. And then, I mean, you know, you have to sort of imagine maybe that could be you. I mean, Van Gogh, you know, never sold a painting, but all the other artists knew how good he was. So I had artists I really respected. Like my work.
How did they, was it back then like it is now where artists would visit each other's studios and that's sort of the main?
Like one of them, okay, one I didn't even know her. I don't know if you know Jessica Stockholder's work.
Yeah.
I always talk about this. She called me out of the blue and said, you know, I'm a real prude and your work really upsets me. And I think I gotta have a piece. And we traded and we had lunch. I thought, well, first actually, I thought, oh, she wants me to get her a job at SVA. Because I've been teaching here since 1986. But I taught freshmen and I taught second year for years. So, because I love to teach. So I thought she wanted me to get her a job. So what does she want? You know, what does she want? So we have this entire lunch. And then finally she says that she's a big prude and my work really upset her, so she knew it was important. And we traded. Jack Pearson put me in a show at Tadeusz Ropak, and that became my gallery. Just, you know, certain people really reached out. Chris Wool, I didn't even know him, came up and said, I love what you're doing. Yeah, things like that. That keeps you going.
You said that your way out of the hole was when a dealer decided to show your mother paintings.
Photos.
Sorry, your mother photos, and that I love those photos, by the way.
Thank you.
And that, when you said, was that about rehabilitating your reputation
I think she just loved the photos. Well, I couldn't understand why all of a sudden I was let back in the art world. I figured that's got to be the reason, because, oh, dysfunction, she must be a serious artist.
Do you think the art world still has that
Absolutely.
sense of a gate?
Yeah,
like
there's a real backstory with a lot of artists. Once you know the backstory, everything makes sense.
And it still works that way.
Yeah, don't you think?
Well, I'm always saying that there's no longer an art world, that there's many.
There has definitely
worlds.
always been many, though, I think. There's always been many art worlds. Sometimes there's circles and they overlap and make Venn diagrams.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one thing that I feel like in the short time that we've known each other, but that I've really been paying attention to your work, I've learned a thing or two.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And
oh, that's very impressive. Because I'm not an intellectual.
Well, I think about visual pleasure.
Yeah, visual pleasure is everything.
And the role it can play
in,
I don't know, drawing people into an aesthetic
well, look at Carol
experience.
Walker.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's the best. Yeah. That I actually am a collector of her calliope. Is that how you say it? Calliope? Yeah, did anyone see it at the Whitney the other night? I mean, it's just hideous in person. It'll break your eardrums. But it looks so great from a distance.
So, I mean, I sort of alluded to this when I was introducing you, and I was just riffing, and I said that your work has gotten, in some ways, more polished. But I do think that, you know, you were making these photorealistic paintings of black and white photographs on linoleum and like a coffee spill, and then these quite technically accomplished sort of Ben-Day dot paintings of, you know, of pornography and of food, but they were a lot harder to look at. They didn't have the level of polish and seductiveness that
yeah,
your
that's
paintings
true.
do now. And I'm
It's
wondering,
true.
that was a pretty conscious decision, right? To make
no,
it super
it was
beautiful?
organic because I didn't know. I only knew how to work from the. I was sort of this fake mechanization by the fact that I had the projector on, projecting that dot screen. But before the projector, I would paint freehand with the projector on, so it dripped and made a big mess. And then, so it was this kind of fake ABX. But the dot screen, once I put the dots on, the picture started coming into focus.
Oh, about those.
So it was fake mechanization, too.
About the porn paintings, you talked about, you know, going for the money shot, and also the drippy paint was. I mean, it seems like the drippy paint was kind of an allegory for bodily fluids.
It was also that, and I was thinking, you know, it made sense that that the enamel should drip. Because it dripped all the time. I had to clean it up all the time. Because it's very translucent.
Enamel's the kind of paint that sign painters use, right?
I use sign painters paint. I still do.
The representational sign paintings that are going on right now along the Williamsburg waterfront up into Greenpoint are just amazing.
Yeah.
You haven't checked it out yet?
I wonder if they use enamel.
They do. I checked.
Yeah.
They're amazing. So.
It dries fast.
Yeah, so you wanted to make pubic hair look so good, make it so good looking that people could hang it in their house. And you've done that, and people want to buy it, and then they find out it's pubic hair and they won't. They
don't buy any of the pubic hair of the photos, but I still making them because I love the way they look. And I think of them, you're going to make fun of me, but you know the Balsinia series from Twombly? I think of them, that's what they're going to look like. All of them in a room together someday.
Do you think much about the relationship between painting and photography over, like, historically and in your work?
Well, photography for me was a way I could draw faster, you know, so it was a tool. And once I started using Photoshop, I stopped drawing altogether.
But now you show both side by side.
Not that much, because the last couple of shows were all paintings.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a really dumb question intentionally, but maybe it'll provoke an interesting response. What's the difference between painting and photography in your work?
In my work? Well, if you look at the painting, it's a lot richer. It's got a lot more a depth. And the photography still has that sheen that stops you. You know, I'm working with dye stub right now, and so it's even more intense. And I just love the paintings more because I think it's only other painters know it, though, so I know that. I mean, most people wouldn't know the difference. I mean, they're fucking stupid as far as I'm concerned, but why would they? You know, they're just so used to seeing images that are photos. You know, painting is sort of, you know, the redheaded stepchild of the art world.
I feel like your paintings reward a much longer look than the photographs
I think of it that
like
myself.
they keep giving more back to you the longer you look. And there's
but
something...
only people that are crazy about surface notice. So I'm really working in kind of a vacuum, but I have no choice. You know, I wish I could be satisfied. My dealers come in and say, oh, that's finished, let's take it. I said, no, it isn't, I got another 6 months.
When you say you erase one side, do you mean you, like on an enamel painting?
I've literally sanded it right off.
You sand it off,
yeah. That's the beauty of enamel, you can just sand it right back down.
So I rode along on a studio visit with your crit class a couple years ago.
Sure, I remember.
And I was amazed to see you.
Well, they use their palms. And
yeah, you're painting with your fingers. So what's up with the finger painting? Why no brushes?
We'll use brushes too. It just softens the edges. So, I mean, I don't care what they use. Gloves, just flat, so there's no ridge.
So this is something that comes up.
And that way you can get translucency.
By?
The color dries and then another color goes on top of it, and you can see it because it's all the same level.
I see.
That's why we think of ourselves as sculptors, although nobody else would ever think that probably.
Because
but it's really like building it, yeah. But a very infinitesimal
So you're not
depth.
You're not developing transparency by using media to make the work
No,
more
it's
translucent,
pure,
as in glazing.
Yeah.
It's
I don't even
more the
use
thinness of the
turp.
work.
Yeah, I don't even use turp.
Pure enamel paint.
I mean, I clean the brushes with turp, but I never thin the paint with turp, ever, ever, ever.
So your work you work both in fashion photography sometimes.
No, I wish I did more because they pay so much, but nobody ever really hires me. They rip me off though. But here's a good story. You have to look it up though, and I signed a, what are those things? Non-disclosure, but the checks went through, so I don't care. There was a video out by Christina Aguilera a few years ago, and I got all these text messages and like in the middle of the night, and from California. Said, wow, did you direct this video?
I remember that.
Yeah. I told you that story?
Yeah, I feel like I was maybe one of the people who texted you.
Yeah, everyone asked me if I did this, and I said,
I was like,
no,
either
and I don't.
You did this or they're ripping you off.
Yeah, they just ripped me off, I don't care. And then my agent said, well, let's get him to give $50,000 to Planned Parenthood. And so he sued him. And as long as, now my name is on there, inspired by Marilyn Minter, but they only gave us $20,000. I didn't want the money, I just wanted the money to go to someplace good. I didn't care. I would like the money, I'm not some kind of saint. But I thought it's self-serving to sue for myself, so this is why I give a good cause.
So I introduced you as an artist and an activist.
Very much so.
But not an activist artist?
Not like Hank Willis Thomas. This is all activism. I just have a thread in everything. But I have another practice. 30% of my life is activism. Since Trump came in, for sure. But I've been an activist since I was 16.
Right, so organizing, fundraising.
Yeah. I just had no platform before. Nobody knew who I was. I was just
in
another marcher.
It's primarily around electoral politics with a focus on reproductive rights?
Well, it started with reproductive rights because I saw that from the very beginning, I saw that was really the difference between, autonomy and, that it was just too hard to get abortions in the South when I was growing up. And I knew people that had to go like to Mexico by themselves and, just scuzzy things. And I thought, well, women are still going to get abortions. They're just going to be unsafe and illegal. And then I saw this creeping. I really stopped doing any politics once, other than, protesting the Iraq war. But other than once Clinton came in, I thought it was a done deal. We'd never go backwards. But then I listened to the news all the time because I'm still a political junkie. And I would watch these trap laws getting enacted all over the country where they were shutting down abortion clinics because of the hallways being too small, or just, the far right was getting more and more and more powerful. Now they're about to overturn Roe v. Wade. So I got more and more active. And I guess it started raising money for Planned Parenthood because I saw them needing the money, and they were beat up so bad all over the country. But I knew 70% of the population were all for women owning reproductive rights.
Quick take on Me Too and Brett Kavanaugh?
Oh, that's like really shocking. He's such a tool. He's so clearly a tool. Yeah, I mean.
Brett Kavanaugh is the most recent appointment to the Supreme Court.
They never really even vetted him. Yeah, it was all bullshit. And they got away with it because there was nobody ever, we had no power.
Okay, a few more quick takes.
You all are going to vote, right?
Those
Did
who
you
can.
vote last time? So many of your age group didn't vote. It's never been this dangerous, and I've been an activist since I was 16, never been this dangerous. And I saw the cities burning all across the country, and it's never been this bad.
So 2/3 of our students are not U.S. citizens and so can't vote. So there's a lot that they can do, however, if they want to invest in political change in their current host country. So we can talk about that offline.
That's true.
Another quick take. You said you love the Phantom, which is a high-end digital cinema camera. Is it because of its slow motion?
Well, I do love things really close up and really slow-mo. But it's so ubiquitous now, it feels like corny to use
So you need a new fancy camera.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
Every commercial is slow-mo now.
So you told an anecdote about how you got the idea to paint behind glass, or to photograph images with a layer of glass in between. But
that turned into the shower.
It's been a while, and now, I wanted to ask you to reflect on that. What's the glass mean?
It turns it into 21st century grooming.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's just another Degas,
That's the way the glass functions in...
For me, yeah, it turns it into the present. I'm really interested in art that takes shows a picture of the times we live in, that we know exists, but we've never seen it before. You've seen tons of women, John Curran, but women don't paint women grooming.
That's in the grooming work, but you've been using glass since before the grooming
209,
work.
yeah. It kills the narrative a bit.
Because you're allergic to narrative.
Yeah,
and
really
you're putting the image behind glass, and the glass has stuff on it. Condensation,
this
drips, goo.
For fun, I'm going to ask you, what subject matter, you can't tell what year it was painted? Anybody know? I do.
What subject
think
matter
about
you
things
can't tell
like
what year it was painted? Like what genre of paintings you can't tell when it was painted?
No, you can't
in
tell.
In your work or in general?
Anyone's. You can't tell if it's 1900, 1800. Close-ups of bodies. Close-ups of bodies. Also raw food. But, believe it or not, landscapes. You can tell by their style, but not a tree. So...
Do you have any more questions for the audience before we let them ask?
I don't know. I just think that's really interesting. That's like universal. If you want something that, the Bauhaus, where they really believe this still, they really believe this is like going to be universal forever. But abstract paintings, you know exactly when they were done. This is a 50s abstract painting. This is a 90s abstract painting. Yeah. Now you know it's abstract because it was done in a computer.
So we have a really full house. I think we should take some questions from the audience.
Okay. Any questions? That young man?
So if you don't mind, we have a microphone that doesn't amplify, but it helps your question get picked up on the recording. Just go ahead and speak into it. It doesn't amplify, but yeah.
Absolutely love your work. Thank you
thank
for being here. Quick question. What do you think about the representative who just resigned over...
I think that's terrible.
I kind of figured that. I just wanted to hear
kills me. Katie Hall. Yeah, it kills me. Katie Hill? Katie Hill. Yeah. Well, it's the slut shaming again. And I mean, Duncan Hanna's not resigning. And he had tons of affairs, Why is it she had to resign?
Double standard.
Such a double standard. That's what I'm talking about, like why we just pile on. We have to rethink things. Just not automatically assume that, when you see somebody built up and then is there a way to tear a woman down, it's going to happen. Why do you think that is? You don't really do it to men. Built-in misogyny we saw the built-in misogyny with Hillary. It's just, if we think about everything a little bit harder, It's really, you just don't have these automatic reactions, especially about, you know, who's cool and who's not. Because the culture builds up women and then just loves tearing them apart. I don't know if they do that to male actors. Or, you know, really, do they? That really breaks my heart. You know, I hate Kristen Gillibrand because of it.
Al Franken was a senator who resigned last year after accusations arose of multiple...
He's a male ally, yeah.
Multiple accounts of
I love men. I mean, you know, my husband's a huge activist. You know, I really think that we need male allies to make a lot of noise about Me Too. You know, my husband does that. You know, said, well, yeah, that's really inappropriate. He'll do that to his friends. Mm-hmm. Call it out.
More questions? Just wait for the mic.
Mark will do it, right?
So during your talk, you were talking about the downfall of women, and you just spoke about it again. And I'm really interested in, you were talking about that in context to celebrities and women in pop culture.
Well, that's because everybody knows Lena Dunham and Taylor
And you've worked
Swift,
with celebrities, so I wanted to know if you could talk about that a little bit.
Well, I watched, you know, the one person that, when I did the Planned Parenthood and I made these T-shirts with Marc Jacobs, the only young artist I could get was Miley Cyrus. Because she was fearless, because she had that, I knew that to ask her because she had that, she was helping homeless gay youth. She had that Happy Hippie Foundation. She's already a billionaire because of Hannah Montana. And she just, you know, took it. Now, you know, women are stepping up. But I mean, we asked so many women to help us. And they were afraid they'd lose, you know, their fans in the Midwest or the South or something. So they said no, but now I think people are really stepping up, starting to make noise, you know. That's really, I mean, somebody just resigned someplace that I just thought right before I came over here, they've been on the streets for 2 weeks, millions of people. And the head of the country just resigned. And they didn't do anything, it was nonviolent protests. Wow. Yeah, the head of the legislature or something. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? So I'm pathetically a political junkie. I wish I wasn't. I want to just read books.
So where do you turn for info? Is it MSNBC?
Oh, I'm horrible. I'm a Twitter fanatic. Okay. I'm a Twitter junkie. Don't do it. It'll ruin your life. That young lady?
They'll say we have a question from Jennifer.
Hi, thank you. I really loved hearing about how painting with your fingers and not mixing turpentine into your paint. Are there any other kind of processes you could tell us about in your studio, like how you prepare your surfaces, or if there's...
Not really. I mean, it isn't it wasn't like if I could figure out how to not get ridges, I would. It was just, you know, it was the only thing I had. I started, you can see in the commercial, I was painting with my finger already. It just came really organically.
You mean how to avoid brush marks?
Yeah, just to get rid of the brush marks, basically, because it dries so fast. It dries like acrylic, but not quite that fast, so you could actually still manipulate it 10 minutes later.
Familiar, like, to a regular painting process? Like,
well,
do you
like
prepare your surface a special way?
I shoot that steam, but steam doesn't last. So I figured out a way, just from experimenting, that if I freeze the piece of glass, and then I wait till it melts and it's so cold the steam stays so I could shoot. So these are like techniques, like I didn't know about adding vodka. I would have added water to any of those. That's why I love doing commercial jobs, because I learn all of these techniques from the prop people. Oh, listen, it'll work a lot better, this cake decoration, if you mix it with vodka. It's much more viscous. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so I teach this class called Colloquium with all the first-year students, and again and again, the question of working with assistants comes up.
Yeah.
And there's different ways of working with assistants. And my sense was that you told me it takes about a year for a new assistant to sort of train.
No, it takes 3 years to get any good. Yeah,
and they learn from you and from each other.
Yeah. Well, when I started, it was just me. And then I hired somebody who was one of my students. And then he got better than me. So I had to catch up to him. And then there was just the two of us for a really long time. Then we hired one other person who was one of my ex-students who was really a good sort of, just a really interesting painter. And she changed my entire palette. And like we were working, you know, primary colors and complementary colors, and she started putting proper purple in the, you know, and really more like CMKY colors, digital color. And I've learned so much more from having people. So I'm not stupid. If they're better than me, I want them to work on that section. Like nobody makes strips as good as one of my kids. And he's about to leave because he's becoming a really successful artist. And I just, you know, I wish nobody can touch strips like him. And we're going to lose that when he's gone.
So I'm just sort of thinking about the subtext of the conversations that we have about assistants. And I guess it has to do with authenticity, attribution, artistic integrity.
It's all of those things. They have to love what they're doing. See, if you hate what you do, and everybody I hire is somebody who can sit there for hours. We call it the knitting gene. Just like do, the repetitiveness. And you just sort of get lost in it. And it's sort of really very contemplative and therapeutic. That's why I love to paint, because I get lost too. It's so nice. But I have people that work for me that are better than I am. Should I fire them? Technically, they're better. I invented it, so I figure, you know, I make it work for me until they leave.
There's still Marilyn Minter paintings.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all my ideas, and you know.
It's a way of making paintings that you developed. That you
you know, if I make a painting, like I made that entire painting, finished it, and I hated it, I wiped out a year's worth of work for somebody. Yeah. So it's, and when I used to have to wipe myself out, it almost killed me. It's a lot easier to wipe out somebody else.
Another question from the audience?
You explained that the bush paintings, you said pretty much how they were received, that they weren't really selling. What about the paintings, your country needs you?
There weren't any paintings. They were just video.
Oh, it was all video.
Yeah, those were photos. They were still for the video.
And how was that received?
I don't know, because I haven't really shown. I showed it in L.A. There was talk about LACMA buying it, but it never really happened. But it didn't matter. I had to do it.
And another question that came up today in colloquium was about whether the art market has replaced or supplanted art critics as, or art criticism, art writing as the main system of validation.
I don't think it really, it's too bad too, because some of the critics are so great, but there really doesn't seem to be I like to read, I love reading good reviews on bad reviews. I love reading reviews because they give you more. I love reading reviews of movies too after I've seen the movie. You know, it gives you sometimes another point of view.
But the idea that a bunch of critics panning a show would cause a gallery to pull it, if it now what matters?
Wouldn't matter.
Right.
Yeah, if they're selling, they don't care. That's too bad because it sort of breaks my heart. Who's going to replace Roberta Smith and Jerry Saltz and Peter Schjeldahl? Who's going to replace them? Who do you read that's like really speaks truth to power?
Hyperallergic?
Do they?
Hell yeah.
Good. Okay, because I like
on an editorial level as much as the level of the individual writers.
Yeah. I've never read a bad
What they
review
write about.
lately. A friend of mine, Alexander Mir, is making this book because we were talking about the fact that we have these excoriating reviews and we never see them anymore, especially in the art magazines, because everyone's afraid to write them because then you lose the gallery advertising in your magazine. So Hyperallergic doesn't have any advertising?
No, they do, but it's online, so it's a little different.
It's online, yeah. But it's like, so she's making a book called, you know, Bad Reviews. And there was a review, and I got him to do it because I've known him so long, Robert Longo. And the headline of the review was Robert Long Ago. And the review was from Roberta Smith, and it was vicious. And it was like almost, no, it was in the 80s. And it was like, you don't even read reviews like this anymore.
There's a strong connection between you and Longo, your work and Longo's work, right?
We like each other.
And this kind of transformation of a photograph into something that's so much more.
He's got assistants, except he's not in color.
True. I love his drawing.
But he doesn't take the pictures.
Right.
So I'm better. I'm friends with him. Don't tell him I said that.
Another question. We've got a few more minutes.
There's two people.
So thank you. So I'm wondering if you spend any time looking at Instagram and specifically at videos that young women are making of themselves, like playing with slime or
I've seen them.
mukbang,
I've
which
seen
is
them. I mean,
like videos of yourself
I have an
eating.
Instagram account.
Yeah.
I just don't follow anybody. That's because I'm a Twitter junkie. And I knew if I watched people on Instagram for hours, and I'm not going to join. I'm not going to start following.
I think there's something in them that's about young women representing their own sensuality, or maybe their bodies if they're eating. Videos that are close-ups of their faces eating.
It's getting much more acceptable, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm also
the
way that they're
Petra
framed.
Collins did it, people went nuts.
It's almost like they're taking notes from your compositions. So I wonder if
hope
you think
so.
about how you're teaching people to
That would be lovely.
represent their own bodies.
Yeah. I just say, the shame of standing up. I want people just to not get over it.
No. Former student of mine is in the audience, and I'm trying to pressure her to ask a question. No? Okay.
That guy wants to answer. Ask.
Hi, big fan of your work. Thanks for the talk. And I was wondering, you're talking about when you're struggling with being slammed all the time in the 90s and before. What is it that you're saying that is the artist friend that you had was the support?
That really kept me going, having friends. I joined this feminist reading group. They're pro-sex feminists. There were a lot of us at one point. And that's how I met a lot of the women that are in the movie The Deuce, this TV show. Because they were slammed too. And now I'm friends. I didn't know what Betty Tompkins was doing, and I was friends with her. We just never had seen each other's work. And that was, she makes me look like I was a pussy. And this is in the 60s, I'm so impressed with her. And I don't know, I mean, she got censored, she got slammed, nobody paid any attention to her. And she was such a revolutionary. And then I knew Judy Bernstein, but I never knew anything but the screw drawings. The only one that was representative of sexual imagery at all was Carol Lee Schneemann in the larger art world. And then that one photo of Linda Binglis in Art Forum, which I thought was brilliant. Women owning sexual agency, sexual reproduction of pictures. They're the agents,
Madonna seemed to play a really important role in popular culture in that regard.
That's where we bonded. She actually bought that video, Green Pink Caviar, and showed it for, and that's where we bonded, because she got thrown out of her respective world when she did that sex book.
That was 1989, 1990.
Same time.
Yeah.
But she got let back in when she made Evita. So it was, and she's really had, a very rocky career. I mean, and if you look at early Madonna, she paved the way for everybody.
In terms of owning the representation.
Oh, owning representation. I mean, Mae West was one, and then Pamela Anderson was always, you know, she always said, I'm a pinup. That's how I make my money. I'm not an actress. I'm not a dancer. I'm a singer. I'm a pinup. And I thought, she does pretty well, you know. And then I knew she was an animal activist, and I am too, so animal rights activist. I mean, so I thought, I shot her for, I put her in the, I didn't show any of them because I tried to go fast, but I put her in this art magazine from Switzerland called Parquet. And it folded a few years ago, but it was this real intellectual magazine, and they didn't even know what a centerfold was. I had to draw one on, and at that point we didn't have, all we had was fax machines. So I had to fax them what a centerfold looked like. I put her in the centerfold in Parquet.
That's cool. Yeah, you should, if you haven't seen Parquet, check them out in the arts library. They're beautiful.
I have to say one thing about Parquet. They really picked artists that didn't go away. Mm-hmm. You know, you look at Art Forum, and they don't even know half of the artists on the covers. And Parquet, everybody's still around. Pretty interesting.
Another burning question. We'll maybe make this one our last.
Okay.
Hey there. Also from Florida, so I appreciate that. And sort of, maybe it goes with the question. And seeing that you went to UF and you said it was kind of conservative there, seeing when you were saying, I guess, looking at what was happening in advertising, that the dirt looked very sort of particular, like too set up. Seems like you mentioned also that intuition was something that guided you, but almost asking the question of like what needs to be asked, and then almost reverse engineering, guiding that, like what
mindfulness,
what you're going to do.
Yeah, mindfulness and opposite behavior.
But I seem to almost detect almost like this like sense of like almost like instigating, but almost like enjoying the process. Would you say like?
I have a lot of pleasure out of doing what I do. That's actually, when you know, I thought that's really one of the things I should, like you said, how do you live through being slammed? But if you like what you do, I mean, it's corny as it is, if you like what you're doing, it gives you enough pleasure that you can do it even if no one's paying any attention to you, because at least you're getting to do what you want to do. I didn't want to be someone who regretted not doing something. But, you know, it's like, there is no, I mean, I really, really believe this in my heart and soul. Don't be an artist unless you have no choice. It's just too hard. It's constant rejection. And I've asked a lot of artists, even really, really famous ones, do you believe this, that there's a really hard time at the beginning or the middle or the end of your career? And everyone says, yeah. And people you think have never had any trouble, I said, well, at the end of my career, now I have to go buy my paintings at auction because I'll ruin my entire market if I let this pass. So they have to spend millions on their own work just to survive the art market.
So a theme that I've been bringing up lately is success. And
it's really dangerous.
So as a student, as an emerging artist, how would you encourage people to think about success?
Well, you think it will hit that sweet spot and then you'd never be unhappy again. And it just doesn't work, you know. And that's one of the reasons I do so much activism, is that's where my sweet spot is there. If you do service and you give back, that's where you get real joy in life. And you should have a life. You should have a pet. You should have a love, you know. You should take care of some little thing. You need a life. I don't think Van Gogh really made those paintings when he was in the throes of his pain. You know, he was stable when he made those paintings. Those were stable moments. So you got to stay right-sized, because if you believe you're good press, then you got to believe it when people say you're shit, because they will. You know, there's not a piece of art made that you can't fight an argument against.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you.